All right. There we go.
Hello?
Hello. Hey. There we go.
Hey guys, Dusha here.
Hey, Dusha. Awesome. So we know the line works. So now we're going to go back and mute the lines so that people, if they jump on. No, sure. Or if they've got feedback, which typically happens.
You are now muted.
Okay. Sweet. Okay, great. All right, so my name is Scott Wells. I'm the developer of Illuminated Cloud, and I'm actually out here with my family for the week, so thank you very much. I know you guys adjusted your schedule this week from your normal meeting time to accommodate, and I really appreciate that. I'm sorry?
That doesn't mute this, does it?
No, it keeps this going. It just
okay.
Other people. Gotcha. Yeah, that would be bad. So what I thought we'd do is, I mentioned to the folks that were in here just a few minutes ago, is I've got an agenda of just going through some of the features. What I would like to do real quick is just provide maybe a minute or two of background on myself. So I've been developing since I've been out in the industry since '94, so quite a while now. Going through Unix C, Windows C++, a lot of Java, majority Java, and then in late 2010, the company that I'm with now started moving from an enterprise on-premise model for their software into a SaaS model. We were kind of a little bit along that curve by doing managed hosting, but we decided to go full-blown multi-tenant SaaS. We went and evaluated Salesforce, in particular Force.com, as whether it would play a role in that, decided that it would, particularly for the glass, for the system of engagement versus the system of record. Our back end is a lot of large-scale data processing, things like that, doesn't lend itself well, so that actually resides in AWS. And so over the period of the next few years, we started to build a series of managed packages that represent our actual products. And like everybody else, I think I experienced the good and the bad that comes with that. The good is so much of the problem you normally have to solve yourself is just commoditized with Salesforce. The metadata-driven nature is absolutely fantastic. The very strong set of APIs around it allow you to even work around some of the things that aren't there. Of course, on the negative side, tooling did not exist. Force.com IDE was out there. Maven's Mate had not come around. The tooling API did not actually exist. So trying to figure out how to make yourself comfortable, especially in a hybrid app when you've got great tooling for Java and then almost no tooling when you go back over to the glass side of things, very frustrating. So about 2 years ago, after tinkering with some way to get I've been using Intellij IDEA as my primary Java IDE since about version 3, and I think I somewhere around 15 years, and love it. I don't think that it's necessarily better than Eclipse or something like that. I think that it's a matter of what you grow up with, where your fingers want to go on the keyboard, things like that. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out a way I could use my favorite IDE in order to cover that Salesforce need. And I came up with some reasonable solutions, but nothing felt completely comfortable. And so somehow I found myself with a couple of weeks of time and sat down and started banging away a plugin for myself. And then a few months later, I had something, I had a rudimentary parser. I had code formatting so that I could actually go reformat code finally because, like you were talking about earlier, we had 40 people all around the world using every editor under the sun to edit code with tabs, not tabs, whatever, and code just looked like a jigsaw puzzle, right? And so finally we could reformat code, things like that. And then I decided to just keep going with that. And I'd like to show you today what it's turned into. About a year ago, a little over a year ago, I went ahead and released it out as a commercial product, and the reception's been absolutely wonderful. Had a great time with it. I've enhanced it a lot since then, and I have really extensive plans for it going forward. So, any questions at that point on that? Okay. So, is anyone not familiar with Intellij IDEA or just spending a second there? Okay, great.
I just installed it today.
Okay. It's an IDE from a company called JetBrains. Been around for quite a while. I think a lot of people see it as pretty much the other IDE besides Eclipse. There's actually Java IDE, I should say. There's actually a third one called NetBeans. It's actually very good as well. But in general, if you go look for the flame wars online, you'll see IDEA versus Eclipse. Eclipse was born out of some IBM projects. It became free. The plugin community went crazy for it. JetBrains had Intellij IDEA at some point around, I can't remember what version it was, they started refactoring it to have a more modular core, to have a better plugin ecosystem around it, and they even released a free version of it. There's now a Community Edition and an Ultimate Edition. In particular here I'm talking about for Java. JetBrains has products for a lot of other environments like Python, even Windows, .NET environment, things like that. I'm very specifically talking about their Java IDE here. And Community Edition is completely free. It's actually fantastic. Everything I'm going to show today is in Community Edition for what it's worth. That's one thing I want to emphasize. Ultimate Edition does bring a lot of very great things to the table. The support for HTML5 in particular is dramatically better. JavaScript, CSS, frameworks, Node, Angular, things like that, much better in there. Additionally, if you use any enterprise level systems for source code management, for task tracking, things like that, you have to go in general to Ultimate in order to get that. So like we use Perforce in my day job. Now, fortunately the guy who sits right there went and wrote his own Perforce plugin for free, and so we actually use that now. But in general, if you use TFS or something like that, you would have to go to Ultimate in order to use that. If you don't, if you use Git, if you use Mercurial, if you use SVN, CVS, anything like that, you can use Community Edition. And so what Illuminated Cloud is it's a plugin called a custom language plugin for Intellij IDEA that extends its core capabilities for Salesforce development. It adds the notion of Apex as a language, and SOQL and SOSL as embedded languages within that. It adds the notion of .page and .component files and .cmp and .evt for Lightning, and it takes the things that already exist in Intellij IDEA, and it basically allows them to work for those files. It even takes the markup for related languages and it actually injects those into the standard HTML editor. So if you're in Community Edition, you get OK support, you get HTML tag completion, things like that. I'll show you, I've actually supplemented it for JavaScript and CSS completion and such. Not as good as what they have, but it injects it into their HTML editor. If you have Ultimate Edition, it's really awesome, but it has a cost associated with it. So let's go ahead and dive in. So one of the first problems that I had to tackle, and it's one of the most important concepts of Illuminated Cloud, is I had to go out and figure out how to get an SDK together, because Salesforce doesn't really publish an SDK. So their class libraries, the components for, like the standard components for Visual Force development, things like that. So I had to go out and figure out how to do that, and not in a way that's hard-coded. I don't want to have to go basically have to track that all the time. And as I said earlier, Salesforce is great about APIs. Wonderful about APIs, and the tooling API in particular was created in particular to support this type of problem, to support the creation of third-party tools for developers. Not just IDEs, also things like application lifecycle management tools, like continuous integration, continuous deployment, things like that. But what I did is I went out and basically mined all of their APIs. Turned out the tooling API was insufficient for what I wanted. It had large gaps in it. I actually reported these back to the product managers at Salesforce. So combination of the tooling API, the metadata API, the partner API, and actually some undocumented APIs I happened to stumble upon one late December evening that, believe it or not, give me a completely strongly typed version of the custom classes that are deployed in managed packages and things like that. So if you ever use an IDE and you get any, if you've ever seen that, or these completely untyped things, you can't really do a completion off of that. I don't know what any is. I actually found something that gives me this weird codified signature that I had to sit there and trial and error figure out how to decode, just like this line noise, figure out how to decode, and I was able to go and I was able to get all the template parameters, like the generic parameters, the modifier, static, final, all that, and at this point you generate a very, very strongly typed SDK. So that's called the offline symbol table. And what will happen is when you first create a project, when you first go in, there's a wizard that guides you through. I'm not going to do it right now because I don't want to spend time with you guys watching progress dialogues. But there's a wizard that goes through, and one of the things that it will do is it'll generate your offline symbol table. And that gets generated into, from Intelllij's perspective, something called an SDK, just a first-class concept. And you'll see it over here for each of your connections. You'll see an offline symbol table, and you can see things like, if we go to System, you can see all the classes that you would expect to be in here. So like Apex pages, and you can see the accessible interface of it. The accessible interface is going to be the things that are global. This includes managed packages as well, installed managed packages. And so all of this gets brought in here, and now you have these available for completion, for integrated API documentation, And because of the strong typing of it, and because of the fact that, and I'll show this in just a moment, that Illuminated Cloud is actually evaluating, in real time, it's evaluating all your expressions for their types so that you can do chained completions. So if you're familiar with things like the builder pattern, where you're constantly going an expression like call a method, dot, call, and it keeps returning itself, you can actually go all the way through the builder pattern, and it works because it's constantly reevaluating all those expressions, even if they return collection types and things like that. I'll actually show that in just a minute. This is not just for classes. It actually generates a stub Apex class for all the S objects in the system, packaged and standard. And if we were to go to something like, say, contacts, and I'll show you what this is in just a second. I'm actually just doing go to class. If we were to go to contact, and I were to bring up the structure view, you can see that it also goes and understands relationships. So something like assets becomes a list of assets, and then if you were to see something like up here, account ID, it goes and actually gives you that as an ID, which is what it is, but also it understands that account is the dereferenced version of that relationship.
How about external objects?
So I don't support external objects yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you actually, so are you using them at this point?
No, I'm not.
Okay. We're about to use them, and so I will be supporting it. Nothing drives me to innovate here faster than my own need.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah, so we actually are going to expose our back end as OData, and we're planning to do exactly that, is proxy those as external objects.
Interesting.
Does anyone not know what external objects are, by the way? It's a great innovation that happened about a year ago. Anybody doesn't know what they are? Okay, sounds like you do. And so like I said, if you think about what an S object is, it's effectively a table with columns, right? I mean, Salesforce is a database in the cloud. Apex is effectively a trigger language that happens to look a heck of a lot like Java, right? But the nice thing that they did is they allowed you to take your tables and they effectively make them look like classes. If they're not, you can't do everything you can do with a class on it. There's no polymorphic behavior and things like that. That's not entirely true, but there's not a lot of polymorphic behavior. You can't extend them, things like that. But one of the things that happens here with the generated offline symbol table for this is it actually makes it look like exactly what it should look like from an Apex perspective. So completions and things like that, again, just work. So these are S objects. And the same thing holds for, say, your custom S objects. I'm just going to scroll down here. There's one expense. So here's a custom S object. And it went out and created it. And when it did so, it also went out and looked at, as you created your object, you gave names and descriptions and things like that to your fields and your objects. It actually went out and brought that in as comments on it so that you can go and actually see that. So you can see, is this reimbursed? I wasn't very descriptive here in my comments. But
so that's actually the field descriptions go in there?
The field descriptions in the class or the object description actually come in here. Yeah. And
wow. Kind of like what developer or workbench would give you in a way.
Yeah, because they're going out and pulling the same information. So in this case, it gets pre-rendered into the offline symbol table, statically rendered into it. And one of the things that you can actually do, I'll go ahead, we're going to kind of bounce around a little bit here, but integrated API documentation. And so let's just go to controller here. And if I wanted to know the documentation for list, I'm just going to bring it up here. And you don't have to keep up. How did I bring it up? I hit, on Windows, I hit Control-Q. Windows or Linux. On a Mac, I hit F1. So, and I'm trying to be very, there we go. No. I'm trying to be very precise here in terms of, it created a tiny window. And I'm trying to be very precise in terms of resizing this thing, and I'm not doing a very good job of it. Now, additionally, here's a custom object, and I just go ahead and put a description on it, and it went ahead and rendered this out as well. Right? So this is metadata based. I just type that into the setup UI, and then it gets rendered into here. And by the way, I can navigate within this if I want to see documentation for other things. Okay, and this is also it's smart enough to do at the type level, but also at the method level. And I don't think I actually have anything terribly interesting there. So let's go to.
Is this something you can distribute across multiple? You're storing that stuff locally, I would imagine.
I'm storing the documentation.
Yeah.
You mean, am I allowed to distribute that?
So like if you had multiple people distributed across your code base, so you had 50 developers,
right?
Can you have that documentation? Can you distribute that to your other developers? Like, is there a way?
Your own custom documentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll show you that in a second. Okay. So what's going to happen is, if you're familiar with Java Doc,
yeah,
and there's actually something called Apex Doc. I don't support it yet. I will. It's actually something I plan to support in the very near future. For now, and you can see it here, you can go out and just create HTML block comments at the top of classes and of methods. And there is a very simple way to also do cross-referencing. And then I'll go and render that. So if you do that, and then that just becomes effectively part of your living code.
Yeah.
and it automatically gets distributed through your version control system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so for your classes, for your S objects, you just basically, it's part of your .object definition, and then it gets uploaded, and then I generate that into the OST.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. OST, offline symbol table. I get tired of saying offline symbol table. Actually, I get tired of typing offline symbol table. But the other thing I was going to show here is, and by the way, I'm also using GoToType, and one of the nice things about GoToType, again, this is Intellij IDE, all I did is hooked into it, is the camel case completion here is if I want to go to, say, start test, it'll bring up all the test classes as soon as it searches them here. But more importantly, once it does this, is if I want to use camel case completion, because again, I don't want to type very much. There we go. So it's going to bring up all the test classes. I can see all my classes here, shopping list mobile controller test, the util, go here. But if I wanted to go to this by simple name, I can do shopping list controller test util, right? Really quick way to get to it. Don't type anymore. Seriously, don't type. You type it. If I can't emphasize one thing here, don't type every letter anymore. I think the developers on my team get tired of me. I sit down and they're like sitting there typing. I'm like, stop, delete everything you just typed and just type these 4 letters, and then they tell me to go away. But
speed saying acronyms.
Yeah, camel case acronyms. But one of the things, so let's just go to one of our tests. Let's view controller test, and here we should have So if I want to know what size is, you're also going to get it down at the method level. So you don't have to dig through for. And by the way, if you notice, this is a chain expression, right? This is what I meant about change expressions. Let's look at the completion .get shopping list .items.
Right.
Dot
That's what it's going to return.
Size. Right. I can keep going. I get to void. I can't keep going. But anyways, So definitely a time saver there. And you also noticed, or you may have noticed, that as I was typing that, I just typed get SL, again camel cased. It's going to be kind of everywhere you go. You can use that to shorten your typing.
Where did the documentation for the size method actually come from? Because is that part of what
So it's not actually something Salesforce provides yet.
Okay.
So what I have done is I've gone out and internally created a reference lookup for the pages that are online.
Okay.
And actually that changed. It's not pages anymore. It's JSON documents. It's kind of interesting how they get assembled.
Right.
And what happens is every time that I build a new version, it goes out and fetches all that and caches it offline. I actually have permission from you guys to do that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Because there's a hole in what you have right now.
Right.
And the nice thing is it doesn't have to go out. You can be on a plane. You can still get your documentation.
Wow.
So
when you build the offline symbol table, you are building the heart and soul of all of this.
The documentation is at my build time.
Okay.
When I build the plugin. The offline symbol table is when you go out. It's really as needed basis for the developer for that connection. But the reason that I do that at build time is it doesn't vary, because that's just a standard SDK documentation.
Right.
So in fact, I don't actually update it on every build. It gets brought in on every. Actually go and have it download and I do some massaging of it and things like that to make it so that it's more accessible to me. But I actually do that on every seasonal update.
Okay.
Because it really doesn't change in between.
I was going to ask.
There are occasional changes in between,
like
mostly type
release maybe.
But per release, what happens is classes and methods get deprecated, new classes and methods or objects get introduced, things like that, and I go out and catch it up. To a large extent, it'll catch itself up unless it's new classes, and then I just go look at the release notes. So there's a little manual maintenance. It takes me about an hour, but they are going to be putting this into the APIs and making it available. Yeah, part of their tooling initiatives. So I mean, going back over to completion, just a couple of things, super time savers. All right, so this is we are moving around. I skipped into one of the tool windows. Down here at the bottom, there's 3 tabs: Anonymous Apex, Log Viewer, and SQL queries that they're contributed by Illuminated Cloud in this case. So when you go write Anonymous Apex, when you go write SQL, you will get completion here. It's the exact same editor that's used everywhere else. And so I'll show you a couple of things. Just delete this. All right, so str, so this is, there we go. So SD, that's one of the live templates. So I'll just go ahead and say query equals, all right, So I'm going to do a dynamic query here. I'm actually going to use Apex Lang, if anyone's not familiar with it, is a third-party library developed by Richard Van Hook from Salesforce that mimics, if you've used it in Java, the Apache Commons Lang project. Outstanding third-party library. And one of the things that it comes with is it actually comes with a SOQL builder to do dynamic SOQL queries that, does anyone here do managed packages and have to deal with security review? Have you ever used dynamic SOQL and they go out and injection vulnerability?
Yeah.
So if you use this right here, you don't get flagged. They know that this takes care of injection.
I've built my own tool to do something like this and then discovered Apex Lang. So
Okay.
Of course, how the timing always works for that.
Yeah. When you do your exception document for the bad code analyzer, I just say I'm using Apex Lang.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Interesting.
So, all right, so let's just do some, okay, so again, I'm just going to do camel cased. Now, one of the things, this is in a managed package. You can see the namespace in the managed package parenthetically there, AL. I'm going to hit Tab. Don't type managed package prefixes anymore. It prepended it. It'll do it for you. It knows if something can be locally referenced or not, in an unqualified sense or not. This is not just for classes. It's also for S-objects and for S-object fields. I got so tired of typing the prefix on fields in particular in queries.
Right.
You don't have to type them anymore. Just start typing the way you think of it, and it'll take care of everything else for you. And so this is, now we'll do some builder pattern, dot select, and we'll go ahead and do select X. All right, so, and I'm going to do a field, and so now we're going to take some of those special Apex idioms, so shopping list item, dot S-object type, dot fields, dot amount, dot get describe, dot get name. All right, like 8 characters there I typed. Limit, 1. So it's evaluating everything every time, all right? 2 SOQL. So I've got a SOQL query, and now I'm going to go over here and just say database.query on query. Now, I do not have refactoring yet. Right now, what I want to do is extract a variable. I want to do it really bad, so you will have refactoring, not soon because I have a few things ahead of it, but right now you do have to go and actually to the left-hand side, and you do have to go ahead and put a variable over there. But I want to see what query returns. So it returns a list of S-objects. Now, actually, these are automatically downcast to the S-object that you want. So I'm just going to go over here and say list of shopping list item. And now I want to do a variable, so I'm just going to hit space, and it's going to give me suggestions for the variable names based upon the type. And it knows that it's actually a list of them, so it's giving me a plural recommendation. All right, so there we go. So that's going to do that. And now what I want to do is I want to iterate across the list that was returned. And so this is the feature that was just added about a week ago, and it's live templates. And I'm just going to type iter. I'm going to hit tab, and it's going to show me the iterables. And I'm going to go ahead and choose it, and I'm going to say that's what I want to do. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to print this out. So I'm going to do SD, and then I'm going to, so system debug, JSON.serialize pretty shopping list item.
So it inferred the types to put in the iteration based on what you did above.
Yeah, so it actually looks at, so everything here works on understanding what the accessible identifiers are. So it knows what's currently in scope. It's smart enough not to look below in scope, things like that. And so it uses the same logic that's being used for completion and everything, but it's looking for things that are iterable. So arrays, lists, actually, I'll show you in just a second. It even knows about maps. It knows about the key set and values.
Keystroke AI.
Yeah, pretty much. Again, these guys did it. I just was doing it in Java, and I really missed it, right? So I went out and did it. But that's exactly what it is. It's effectively an expert system that's looking at what's available to it.
There's your trade name.
I'm tired of trademarking names. So we'll go ahead and run this, Control Enter, and okay. So with a valid object name, from X with a valid object name. So if we go back over here, so the nice thing is, wasn't paying attention, so it's telling me that there's an error at line 4, column 1, and that's hyperlinks. So I can go over here, so I didn't do a dot from. And so we'll go ahead and say shopping list item dot S-object dot get describe dot get name, and we'll execute again. And now I'm going to go and filter for debug, Alt-D, and there's our JSON. Now let's do something else. Let's actually go debug it. I'm going to debug it. Let's step over. All right, this is what you were talking about earlier. It truncated it.
Yeah.
this is anonymous Apex. I can't set a checkpoint here.
Yeah.
So there's nothing I can do about that one. But let's go run our query, and let's take a look at what we just got back in response to our query. So I'm debugging this. Now we're going to go over here. Now I'm going to go back over to the console, and we'll watch that system debug statement get scrolled to the console. Effectively, every time I step over, it's showing me the log statements that were evaluated in order to give you that.
Wow.
Okay. There are 3 places you can use to initiate debugging, and I'll show this in just a second. One is anonymous Apex. Generally, I find that most useful, not if I'm going to go debug a giant script that I've written once in a while, but if what I'm doing is calling to a static method of code that I'm writing and I just want to do a little ad hoc on it, and then it just stops in the first line, I step into that code and start stepping through it. Very useful. The second is I can go and right-click on a test. I'll show this when I get into the unit testing. I can go and right-click on a test method and say I want to debug it. It'll go and run the test, it'll retrieve the log, and it'll immediately stop at the first line of the test. And the third is I can actually go into the log viewer, and I can go and get one of these logs. Let me see. Let me refresh here. All right, here we go. I can go and grab one of these logs, and I can just go up here, and I can debug. Okay. And so now in this case, it's debugging something that was anonymous Apex, so it's kind of lost as to where it is because it's not a local source, right? If you did that, and here's where things get interesting, and I'll show it in just a moment. If you did that and it was actually a process, say a Visual Force controller, or batch Apex, or something like that, or scheduled Apex, you can actually just go find the log. If it's sufficient log levels, you can go and debug what happened, step through it.
So just automatically bring up the right class windows. And
yeah. In fact, let's just do it. Let's go over to, in fact, like I said, there's a little bit stream of consciousness, but I think the nice thing is we're jumping around to how you'd actually use it. So let's just go to a page. I'm going to go to File, Startup Page, and we'll go over here to the list. And here's a page. This is inside Illuminated Cloud's editor, by the way. So not only do you get, completion here, and integrated documentation here, same types of things. There's your documentation for page. You also, by the way, get completion here. I'm sorry, not the ID, on the controller. You get completion here. I'll go show you all the Apex classes. And I can navigate through to that, and I can find usages of that. And you can see some usages are in the page and some are in the test. So you can actually start to understand your code base. You can see what the usage is. Navigate back into the page. So now let's go and preview the page. So this is, again, an IntelliJ feature. You can configure multiple browsers and everything. So if I want to show it in IE, because I really feel like shooting myself. So we'll go over here and we'll show this here. All right. All right, so that just rendered that. Let's go back over to the log viewer. Let's do a refresh. And there is my controller. All right, now let's bring that up. And one thing I'm going to do, and this may not cooperate. I'm going to try. I may have just chosen the thing that I know is not going to work. It's because of the log they get back. All right, so it actually stopped. They're giving me, I'm subject to what they put in the log. Salesforce does. For some reason, instead of putting the file, instead of putting the controller, they're putting the page. I'm just going to that. So it is bringing it up, in this case, bringing up the line that would be in the controller. And so I'm just going with what they did. And so, unfortunately, that one didn't work. The one I was showing before we started recording was actually a more complex plugin, and it was stopping right on the line. I'll go back and show one in just a minute. But yes, it actually brings that up. Let's go and do that with a test, in fact. Yeah. Mobile list controller test. Yeah. Let's go to mobile view controller test. Mobile list, there. No. Yay. All right. So let's look at how we can run tests. There's a couple of ways that we can run unit tests. One thing I can do is go up to just edit configurations here, and good Lord, can anybody read that? Pardon me. Let's do that and that. All right. So one of the things you can do is you can just go and set up Apex unit test suites here. And these are not test suites like Salesforce has test suites now. These are just running configurations here. So I can go create a new one. And what it does, it goes out and lists all the annotated classes. Now, I say annotated. You can use the isTest annotation. You can use the test method modifier. It'll find both. So you can go out and you can do that. And you can select whatever you want. You can select your logging levels. You can save that. But what happens is then you can go run it. That's if you want to. The nice thing is there was a share button on there. You can go and check those and share them with your team. You can go set up suites and share them with your team. That's really nice. But if I just want to go run a test method or a test class, I can just right-click. I think I did this on the right thing. I can just right-click, and I can say run. And it's going to go out and it's going to run that. Integrated test runner, it's going to show you progress. It's actually going to take the logs and sort them all out to show you ones that pass and don't. I've instrumented a failure here. Makes it a more interesting part of the demo. So in this case, everything's hyperlinked. I can go in, and I can see here that this is the line that failed. Guess what? This probably fixes it. But let's see how we got to that. So I'm going to go up here. By the way, Alt-up there is what I did. I can go, this is standard IntelliJ, Alt-up, Alt-down. Go back to the structure view. Basically, all the things that are also shown in the structure view, which, by the way, filters as you type. So all the things that are in the structure view, you can also navigate them very quickly, Alt-up, Alt-down. Really, really nice facility there. So let's go back to our failing test. And I just want to get to the top of it, so I'm going to go Alt-up. And I'm going to go right-click this, and I'm going to say, I want to debug this. All right, so it's running the test. It finished it. And let me see, is the same thing happening here? Yeah, it is. I hate it when this happens. Let me see if I can get past this. So what happens is there's an issue I reported to Salesforce where they go out and override, if you access like developer console, things like that, they go out and override all of your logging levels. And that supersedes everything. And so if you notice here on the log that came back in that test, go back over to run, even though I set my log levels very, very high, where's debug? I'm sorry. Even though I set my log levels very high, Apex code set to debug. That's not what I set it to. I can even go in the org and I can see that. I can see it's set to finest. Nah, not going to use it. So I've opened that bug with them. They're tracking it right now. But let's see if we can get it back into a good state here by going back over here and forcing it to full debugging, and we'll go back over here and try debugging this again. Hey, yeah, all right. And so it's going to come in, and we can start stepping over. I can step in. I can actually see the stack frame over here if I want to go up and down the stack frame.
So if you built your classes with a lot of system debug outputs, where you're printing out your variables at different states, printing out your I got here, mm-hmm. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just use this.
There's still a high level of value, especially like for ISVs, people getting access to those logs. I mean, it's still a great way to go and get a feel for what's going on. So you don't have to, but I'm never going to discourage logging.
Sure.
Now, what I do find useful is going out and logging at discretionary levels. You know, debug is not necessarily where you need to put everything. Right? Info is definitely not where you put everything. But instrumenting your code with logging that allows the casual observer to come in and we get an idea what's coming, I'm not going to discourage that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have to do that anymore.
Going to your original question, you wouldn't have to. So it's and I mean, as you saw right there, this is fickle. I use it almost every day now. It's fickle. It's not completely under my control. Several things, the logs that get emitted and the contents of those logs. But as you can see, it's an extremely valuable tool. I mean, I use it all the time. So if we get down here where the actual error occurred, and the idea is we're looking and basically saying, you know, verify that there's one item in there. The idea is that I can go over here to my shopping list, and there's its list of items. Oh, well, that's why it's failing.
Wow.
Right? And if I want to even see the contents of that, I can go and look at the contents. So very useful for that. Okay. And so now let's look at actual life cycle. So let's go over here and just fix the bug. And I'm going to save, Control S, and down here you may or may not see it's deploying. Deploying right now with the tooling API. You can configure which API you want to use. And let's just go back into our run here, and I'm just going to go tell it, even though we ran everything, in fact I can see that by turning off the filter and we can see all the ones that passed, I'm just going to tell it to rerun just the failed tests. It's going to rerun that one test. And then when that gets done, world's going to be a happy place, and then we'll go look at code coverage. World's a happy place. So now I want to go look at what my code coverage looks like. So I'm going to go under here, and I'm going to go to show coverage data. It automatically, when you run unit tests, it'll automatically create an Apex coverage suite for you, and it'll be named after the connection you have associated. I haven't gone in and shown the connection configuration yet. I'll show it in a moment. But in this case, the name of the connection, basically where my credentials are set, like it's called dev. I'm just going to check this, and I'm going to say show selected, and it's going to go out and it's going to query the coverage data from Salesforce. And there's a couple of places I can look at this. There's a coverage tab over here. I'm a terrible developer. So these are actually not part of what the original project was. In fact, you can see this is me working on fixing your bugs. But you can see down here that I've got 100% in several places, but here I've only got 18 out of 37 covered lines. So let's go in and actually take a look at that guy. And now, okay, so this may not show up real well. It's a very, very light green over here, like very light green. It's showing the covered lines, and a very light red that's showing up right here, showing uncovered lines. But here's a whole method that's not covered. Okay, so it's a good visual way to go in and take a look at where your coverage is. Now you can also, and I'm a keys guy. I don't like to go to the mouse in general. You've seen I've fumbled as I've gone to edges and stuff. Keys in IntelliJ are your friend. It is amazing, and if you've used like VI or Emacs in the past, you know that's kind of the model there as well, is if you have to take your fingers away from the keyboard, you're wasting your time. I'm pretty emphatic about that to people. I mentioned earlier, I get frustrated when people type too many letters. I also get frustrated if they do something when there's like a key they could use. Like they'll go over and hunt for a file over here, and I'm sitting over there like, ah! So I want to find this in the project view. I'm just going to hit Alt F1, project view, and I'm basically going to have it take me to where that is in the project view. And the nice thing is now I can see all this information over here. Here's a great thing. Now I can see this source. Let's say earlier I had a project set up for multiple managed packages, and I can go look at the source for each one, and I can see what the code coverage is for that package, and I can see whether I can publish or not, or whether a change set will go through. I can see I'm in deep trouble on this project. But anyways, I can go and look at that. So now let's go over and let's fix this problem, okay? So I'm going to do something now. Go to related, Control-Alt-Home. Go to related is going to start to associate, like say this class file here, that's a product class file, and it's going to show things that are conceptually related to it. All right, so there's a meta XML file, of course, and I can go back and forth between that, so I can get to the meta XML file, and if I do go to related for here, it'll take me back to class. But something else that was in there that's important is classes that test this class. So it goes and finds references from classes that are annotated as test classes back in the source code, and I can navigate bidirectionally. All right. Oh, well, I commented out my test delete shopping list here. So I'm just going to uncomment that, Control/, uncommented. I'm going to save it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just run this guy. And when this gets done, we'll go look at our code coverage again. Okay. All right. And now let's go back into our tested class, and let's show it over here on the left. And did it not get updated? Oh, add item now. I guess I didn't have stuff for that. But delete shopping list is now. I guess I had this implemented for another demo. But now this is green, the almost invisible green.
Now the colors, are those changeable?
Absolutely. Let's go into settings for a second. And again, the colors here are, so let's just go and look for, so colors and fonts.
Cover?
Well, that's coverage. And we go in here and we can see line coverage and full. So I can go in here and I can change colors. It's all configurable. I could go make that, and then uncovered was this, red was easier to see. You can hear against this different background, you can see that green, but against white it didn't show up very well. By the way, if people like dark themes, I know that that's a huge thing for people. Seriously. Then you can go in and you can use Darkula, exactly. Let me. It's actually called Darkula, and so JetBrains created it, and evidently it's become like everyone's favorite dark theme. So it's been ported. They actually open source Darkula, the theme, and so.
That looks like Tyler's.
Yeah.
That's the default that comes up, I think, isn't it? The Darkula?
Well, when you go through the wizard, you get to choose, and I don't know. I grandfathered something in from 15 years ago, and I have no idea. So it's like my .emacs file I've had since like 1999. So.
Oh my gosh.
I like the Lime text dark, but I like my Illuminated Cloud light and Eclipse light. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I don't get the darks different. Some of the, I've had a few, like, I want to say it's context, but it's like the black's almost too black, and it makes everything offset weird. Yeah.
I just can't. I think it's the same thing to me. I'm old habits, right? There is if any of you are Windows users, any of you IDPI devices, like there's a IDPI device, I know a lot of them don't use the Windows theme. There's actually a bug in it. Again, I've reported it to them. They're getting tired of me at this point. They go out and look at the scale factor, and they get it wrong, and you end up with text that looks that big. Yeah. And so the Intellij theme's fine. The Darkula theme's fine. Okay. Well, let's go back into settings for just a second. There's a whole lot of settings here. Most of them are not mine, are not Illuminated Cloud's, but they affect Illuminated Cloud, as you saw there. But let's go take a look at some of the things that actually are for Illuminated Cloud. So let's go and look at code style. So I added an Apex code formatter. I went a little crazy here. I think the lack of it, there are about 120 configurable options.
Yeah.
If we go over here, so here's where you want individual clauses to go. And you can see there are Salesforce-specific things, like you can pretty much say where all your social clauses and social clauses go.
Yeah, love that.
The first-class notion of properties, you can say whether simple properties like, just get set, get private set, things like that, whether they should stay on one line if they started on one line. If you break them up, it'll respect that. Social queries, if it's already on one line, don't break it. Otherwise, format it according to the standards here. Spaces, what do you want as your spaces? This is something that drives me crazy, is the people that for some reason treat keywords like for and while as if they're functions and put the parent. I'm sorry if you do that. I'm offending you right now. But it's not a function, it's a keyword. It's a syntactic construct.
Right.
So, but anyways, so I always make sure that the code style that's checked in doesn't do that, and just go reformat other code. But and then they get
Did
mad
you
at
add to this since the early days?
I don't think so. I think it just went crazy early on.
Okay.
I have had requests for a few things to be added.
What was that you said?
Probably was. So I probably have some requests in your backlog from long ago.
Oh, you may, yeah.
Probably.
It's this is the biggest one right here. End of line or next line. This is the biggest one, right?
Yeah.
Literally wars have been fought over this.
Yeah.
And so, and the nice thing is if you go change it, if you watch over here, it'll show you.
Yeah.
And so.
So right way.
Right.
And then we can go back to the wrong way.
Right. Pretty much just looking in Intellij.
Okay, you're out. I'm here, it's done. All right.
To deliver all that, you're just hooking into Intellij kind of normal.
The guys at JetBrains are seriously the smartest guys on earth, period, right? They deserve to retire right now, except I want them to keep adding features. Yeah, their SDK, and I know that the one for Eclipse is awesome as well, but I mean, it's just, I get to something like, there's no way they've anticipated this, and I go look at part of the SDK, and they're like, all they have to do is write like 4 lines of code, and stuff just works. That's not always true. I mean, like the debugger, the completion stuff, they put all the scaffolding in place, but they don't understand your grammar. They don't, right? You can give them hints about the grammar, but they don't understand that it's .s object type, and that should be there. But they make it very possible to do that. Other places to look, file and code templates. So when you go and create a new Apex class, or a new Lightning component, or a Lightning event, or helper, Visual Force page, you can go and you can set up your own templates here. I come out of the box with a whole bunch of them. It's a velocity template. This is all documented in terms of the way that it works, but I've got one for Apex unit test class, exception class. If you get down here, all the different Lightning concepts, you can customize these to your heart's content if you don't like them. There are headers over here that automatically include if you need things like copyright headers by default. So you can come in and you can customize these. And what ends up happening is we'll go over here, and I'm going to hit Control-Alt-Insert, and it's going to ask me what I want to create. I want to create an Apex class, and I can press up and down, and it'll show me all the. And by the way, you can create your own templates as well, and they'll be in this when you cycle through them if they're for .class, right? So if I want to create, say, a unit test class, and I can call it the demo test, and hit Enter. A couple things happen here. Do I want to add it to my source code control? Project setup source code control automatically prompts me, yes. Created a meta XML file. Do I want to add it? Yes. Look at the bottom. It just deployed it. It just created it on the server automatically. It's formatted according to my current code style, even if the template was not, and the header was automatically included.
How did it know which module to add that to? The scope of the page that you did the stroke in?
So yeah, in this case, I did the equivalent of right-clicking when I did Control-Alt-Insert. The scope of that operation is the current scope of the editor.
Okay.
And so what I do is I look up and figure out where you're supposed to be doing it.
Okay.
And similar, we haven't even gotten into Lightning yet, but let's for a moment just show you, because this comes into play here as well, is we can go in, I've got like, let's say a form, and we'll go into the component here, and as you can see, here's the Lightning editor. And same thing that I showed earlier, completion for all the Lightning system components. For custom components, if you create them, in fact, I can show that down here, is we've got another component over here, expense list, and if I just go over here, then I can see completion for expense list, and then once expense list is there, it knows about the attributes of the custom component. Actually, it won't give me completion now because I already have that, so we'll just go ahead and show. So expense, and then it goes ahead and puts me in here, and then when I start a brace section, now it knows that it's talking to the JavaScript and Apex controllers, and automatically gives me completions from those as well as the functions. And so backing out again, the reason that I brought this, and by the way, if you put documentation on your custom components, they're shown here as well. So it all, just like with custom Apex classes, it'll go ahead and give you documentation on your custom components. So I encourage you to actually be steadfast in your documentation of your classes and the code that you write. You'll appreciate it later. You revisit your own code 2 weeks later. So
preaching to the choir.
So, I met a guy that commented his code once.
You met a guy that commented his code?
Yeah.
I met a guy that over-commented his code once.
You had another one.
Yeah. Number 2.
Good for you. So, so if we wanted to, if you're familiar with Lightning, has anybody been programming Lightning? Most people have?
Not really.
Okay. So in short, I'm not going to give a full Lightning tutorial here, but in short, Lightning doesn't deal with things in terms of kind of atoms. It deals with things in terms of bundles. So when you think of an Apex class kind of being standalone, or a Visualforce page being standalone, Visualforce page may be a composite made up of components and include pages. But a Lightning component or a Lightning app is actually made up of several pieces, and those pieces are well defined, depending upon what's an app, an event, an interface component. And generally, there's a primary file for it, like in this case, a component. So it's a .cmp file, component file. But then there are other things you can create, like you can create a JavaScript helper, you can create a JavaScript controller, you can create a CSS style, you can create an SVG for images, things like that, for resizable images. Illuminated Cloud knows about all that. So if I go in and say, okay, I'm in the component right now, and I want to create something, it knows I already have a component. If you look over there, I already have a style, and I already have a controller, and I already have a helper, but it knows that I don't have a renderer, documentation, design, or SVG now. So I can just Control-Alt-Insert, and I can pretty much just create things I want. So I'll just create a renderer for it, and it goes, and it does that based on one of those templates you saw earlier. There was a Lightning renderer.
Okay.
And so it went and created it based on that. And now if I want to navigate back and forth, that go-to related, and it brings me up all the Lightning bundle files for the current bundle that I'm in. So it's a really quick way to do Lightning development and create the pieces you don't have yet as you need them, fill in the gaps, and then navigate back and forth really quickly between them.
Okay.
So
the go-to related is a keystroke that we should have branded on our brains.
Yeah, in fact, let's do this. One of the things I did early on, because I am so AR about this, is I pretty much, now, there are key maps that IntelliJ is already, so for the 3 systems, but one of the things I've been doing is maintaining the functions, the IDE functions that are explicitly supported with special behavior for Illuminated Cloud for Salesforce development.
Okay.
So if you come in here, I advise to anybody that uses it, I get this question a lot, how do I do this? I basically point them here and say, take 30 minutes and just play with these and get a feel for what they do and start trying to incorporate them into your workflow incrementally, because you will find that you become more productive. And it's not because of anything I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here completely. But it's just crazy how much more productive you become. I mean, you just almost start vomiting code. It's wonderful.
Have you ever used Emmet with this, or like Zen coding?
I haven't.
Okay. Where just everything is kind of like a quick keystroke, like if I type in AP, Apex page. Right,
and so the similar to that, so I know about Emmet. I know Emmet takes that to like the nth degree. The live templates I'm going to show in just a second that I've been adding, and then the macros I put under them so other people can add them are pretty much similar. Okay. They're like I said, they're like that minus. They're not quite as sophisticated as that. And in fact, that was. Let's go into the query. So here's SQL query. Is that readable? Wonderful. But let's just do this. So, like I said, this is the full editor here. So you're going to get full completion, right? So if I want to go over here and just say, and I can, now, what am I selecting from at this point? I don't know. So if I hit Control Space, what happens? Well, what it did is it just went out and did the union set of all fields on all objects. So at least you could start typing. But still, that's not a great way to do it. In fact, if I just said Select ID and then came down here and said From, and I'll go ahead and do my shopping list item again, and then I came back up here and put comma, now we're constrained down to the S object type that's there. And in fact, one of the things that's interesting about this is if something here is a relationship, in fact, we'll find one, created by, is it also understands relationships. So I could say, created by dot username, right? Nice. And by the way, QuickDoc works here. So works everywhere that there's an editor. But let's look at a better way to do this. So here's where we go to Cell, right? Live template, subquery, standalone, tab. What do I want to query from? Shopping list item. What do I want to query? Amount, comma, amount units, query, done.
Wow.
Take your result set, select it, go to Excel. Paste it, email it to somebody. So,
wow.
How does the code completion work with, is it always just running on the latest API version for both classes and like fields, right? So like if Salesforce adds a new field to account, right?
Regenerate your offline symbol table.
I'm sorry?
Regenerate your offline symbol table. It'll pick it up immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what about if I'm writing code in API version 34, right? Like, am I going to accidentally have a runtime error because I...
Gotcha. Yeah. So when you set up your connections, and we haven't, funny thing is we haven't really looked at that yet. So go down to languages and frameworks. There's two aspects here for Illuminated Cloud. The one that doesn't have a parenthetical on it is global settings. The one below is configure a particular project called the F15. So start with global settings and then I'll answer your question because it's a really good question. So here you can set up the API that's being used, not the version, but the API and what you want to happen on certain like editor events. One of the things I haven't actually shown yet is I can, you don't get right now feedback until you save. So if I go over and say I want to take with Apex, I want it after 7.5 seconds. I want it to go ahead and just compile, not deploy, compile with the tooling API. Then I can come over here, and we're going to go back in there in just a sec, but let's go to the controller, and I'm just going to have some invalid code. I'm going to do a system debug, and I'll just say hello, and I'm not going to terminate it. Oh, actually, that's funny. My parser caught that one, so it doesn't have to actually have to send it over. So Control F1 actually says, I expected a common operator, semicolon, whatever. So I got that. But let's actually do this. So we'll go ahead and give it what looks like syntactically correct Apex, but debug X is not something. And I'm just sitting here and so think time, right? And you can configure that think time. What you're going to see down here in the bottom right-hand corner in just a second is it's going to go and it's going to validate it. And then it's going to go and it's going to annotate. And see, there's a red underline under it. And so that's actually feedback. Method does not exist or incorrect signature. So you actually can get some real-time feedback or near real-time feedback as you're typing. And again, that didn't deploy. It just went out and did a check-only tooling API deploy. In this case, I use tooling API. A little bit of an aside there, so let's go back in here. But you can set up the API you want to use for each of the metadata types. I'm going to start having more. So right now, the tooling API is only supported for Apex and Visual Force. Since I did this, they've expanded the support in the tooling API for other metadata types. quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and do that because the tooling API is dramatically faster than the metadata API. Static resources and lightning bundles are going to be the first two that I'm going to add support for.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry?
I said no, just wow.
So if we go to project specific, now you've configured in the context of a connection, and this goes to your point, is at the connection level, you specify the API version, and what I do is I go out and use that API version when I invoke the APIs.
Okay.
So each connection you set up, if you're set up for 34, you can do this. The other thing you can do is when you set up your metadata subscription, is you can also, and let's bounce over there again for a second. I'm going to go into the module specific, and here's the subscription editor. There are 3 different ways you can set up your subscription. All package, right? All is not terribly useful. You're going to get a whole bunch of crud that's just in the org. The reason that this is useful is if you've set up against a package in the org, a development package, and then it will basically deploy against that package and retrieve against that package. And this is similar if you've used the Force.com migration tool, the ANT target, the ANT tasks. One of the things you can put on there is that you want to get single package equal true, and you give the name of a package, and you don't have to say anything else, and it'll use that as your filter. That's the equivalent. You set your package here, and you say all package. The next one is if you have your own package XML, and if you have your own package XML, the API version that you use in your connection will be used when you're doing kind of on save deployments, but when you do bulk deployments, which I'll show in just a second, it's going to use your package XML, whatever the version is inside of that. I don't override that. So you want to have those two in sync. And then the other is you can go out and set up your own ad hoc selection here if you want, which is what most people do, I think. But yeah, that's exactly what happened. So I actually had this happen just the other day, to your point, is I went out and tried to use something from a newer API, or pulled in code, copied from a newer API, and the little validation thing caught it immediately because it was deploying against, I think it was 31. A couple other things. I mean, this is pretty stock standard. I mean, basically name your connection, type, credentials, things like that. A couple things I will point out: conflict detection. This was something I added. There's 2 ways you can set it up: dedicated and shared logins. There is a difference. Dedicated logins, it's what it looks for, just so that you understand how it works, is it looks a deployment. It goes and does a stat real quick on the metadata and sees if it's been deployed more recently by another user. If it's been deployed more recently by another user, it prompts you, says that there's a potential conflict here, and it says you can force deploy. Just go ahead and tell me you win. You can retrieve and merge, and I'll show what that looks like in just a second, or you can cancel the operation. Okay? If you do a retrieve and merge, the next time you deploy that, it'll see the same conflict, but it'll ignore it because it assumes that you've merged it. Shared logins, this actually surprised me, but I guess a lot of people do this. I guess, and maybe you guys do this, consulting firms are given one login by their client, right? And they all have to share it. And they go out and they don't want to stomp on each other. So the way this one works is I track the last modified time when you retrieve the metadata, you pull it down. I track the last modified time. I get a capture of it when you deploy it. I get that back in the response, right? And then effectively I go out and look to see if it's been modified since the last time I think it's been modified based upon my local state. It's the best I can do because I can't go see who's been modified. It actually works really well in practice. But it just means to generally, if you've been away for a while, same way with version control, you want to go out and maybe update or sync. You generally want to go and just start with the retrieve just to kind of level set. So, but this works really well for team collaboration, say in a sandbox. If you're working in your own dev orgs or partner dev orgs, uncheck that, and there's a small increase in speed that you'll get because I don't have to go make some API requests. And the other things here, the only thing I'll point out is I will tell you to hit this button from time to time. My software is far from bug-free. I wish it was bug-free, but one of the things, the reason that completions and navigation and all that, as you saw, they're relatively fast. The reason they're as fast as they are, even against really big code bases, is because I cache stuff really aggressively. IntelliJ has, in their plugin SDK, actually has some really great ways to do caching, to do like node local caching in basically their representation of a project. But evidently I still have some places that, like when projects close or when something becomes dirty, that I'm not evicting it from the cache. And after you use it for a while, there may be a little bit of a decay of the cache.
Okay.
I fixed most of it, but it still happens. You'll see this in the log. You'll see it as it's saying something like, invalid PSI element or something like that. And I'll tell you, go out here and hit this button, and it rebuilds the caches. Sorry. Still working on it. So, that's your connection configuration screen. one of the questions that Tyler asked earlier, related to a question he asked earlier, and it's related to a question I get from a lot of people, is how many connections can you set up? What's the relationship between connections and projects, between connections and modules and things like that? I really see it as being a couple of different use cases. To start with, you can do whatever you want, but it doesn't mean you should. Use case number one is I'm working against one code base that I need to deploy to multiple orgs. Say I've got a sandbox and a prod org, right? Or a dev org and a test org or something like that. In that case, I can go out and I can set up multiple connections for the stages, but one authoritative code base. And in that code base, I went to the wrong screen, in that code base what I would do is I would go in and I would just associate, in fact it would generally be default, I'm working with something that's in a package, and I would associate that module here with the connection that is, say, my sandbox, which is really, or dev org, which is really work, and that really is the tie point to version control. I create another connection that's my prod org, and then what happens is in each of these screens I can go out and I can choose the connection that I want to work against. By default it's going to go against that primary one, which should be your do no harm org, not your prod org. And so all those have it, but additionally, and this is where we'll go in and I'll show you the deployment screen, and I'm so inclined to use keys, but if you go under Build, there's an Illuminated Cloud menu and it has several things for save. In case the IntelliJ doesn't see something as modified, you can hit Control-S all you want. It's not going to see it as a save because it's smarter than you are. So this gives you the ability to go and kick it and say save it. Deploy Modified looks at timestamps locally versus timestamps in the server and tries to basically do an incremental deploy. Deploy All goes and deploys everything in the scope, and we'll look at scope. Retrieve pulls, basically what it does, it retrieves whatever's in scope, not directly into your file system. It's a little different than what you may be used to. It retrieves it into a temporary location and opens up a directory diff tool so you can go and reconcile. Could be that you just hit a button and say bring it all over, and if you want to do that, we'll talk about refresh next. But this is the way that you go out. Again, think about when you go in with your version control system, you bring out, you need to do a merge, integrate or merge. It's similar to that. Refresh just says, I want to go take, for the scope that I'm doing, I want to take the latest and greatest in the org and overlay what I have locally. You can only refresh things you already have. It doesn't bring in new stuff.
Okay.
Delete is undeploy. This is destructive changes, if you're familiar with destructive changes. It's a great way to go and scorch the earth on your org if you want at some point. You just go right there. Seriously, I'm not joking. I mean, everybody asks me, how do you do a make clean on an org? Bring it into Illuminated Cloud and go retrieve, do that all package, retrieve all, and right click and say undeploy. And watch what happens. I mentioned earlier the offline symbol table. It was an answer, I think, to your question, but it wasn't quite what you were asking. But the question that I thought you were asking is, if, so like say, let's say that Salesforce just did Summer 17, and you come in the next Monday, and they have some new APIs you want to take advantage of. How do you get those into the offline symbol table so you can use them? Regenerate it. You may need to set your API version higher to pick it up, but regenerate it, and what will happen is it'll go out and just regenerate it. And you can regenerate, there's two scopes right now to it. One is everything, which gets Apex classes, S-objects, and Apex classes includes both system classes, the things that are part of the Salesforce SDK, and also custom classes if you have installed managed packages or things like that. You can also just regenerate the S-objects, and the reason that that's the case is because generating the Apex classes can be a little expensive on big orgs. The most common use case is you go out into the setup UI and you add a new field to an S-object or add a new S-object and you want to be able to complete it locally. So you just go and regenerate that part of it. And then the last thing that was on there under Illuminated Cloud was register checkpoints, and that's when you're doing the debugger. If you go and set some checkpoints here and you want to push them, in general it happens while you do it. If you watch in the bottom right, when I unregister this checkpoint, you'll see it just went and did it. But if for some reason you were disconnected at the time or something like that, and you want to take the breakpoints you put in the IDE and make those the checkpoints in the org, you can just do that. You can also do that from the log viewer, by the way. If we go to log viewer, you can just hit this and it'll register all the checkpoints. So now let's take a look at what it looks like. So if I just go and do this, it brings up the deployment screen. Now, a couple things here. I can choose the connection I'm going to deploy to. So I'm working against dev, but now I'm ready to go push against prod. So I would go and choose the second connection. I can also say what subset of my my code that I have locally do I want to deploy? By default, it's going to be on module. Module and dependencies is kind of an advanced topic when you're dealing with development of multiple managed packages in a single dev org, and I'm not going to go into that in detail right now. We touched on it earlier. But project would be if you have multiple modules and you want to deploy all of them. And it goes, and what it will do is it will look for dependencies and do them in dependency order if there are dependencies. It'll build a dependency graph and do that to make sure that that things are in place first. But it'll go and deploy it all. In general, module is what you want here, because if you set things up the way I just described, your different modules within your project may go to different, maybe for different projects, things like that, different clients. Context will be based on where you select it. In this case, I started this from that one class, and so you can see it toggled to constrain it to only that one class. And custom is if you want to just go and set up your own subset. You want to pick and choose, cherry pick, basically. If you start something from a context, if I go over and just right-click on Aura and go down to Illuminated Cloud and say deploy modified metadata, it'll automatically pick that up and constrain to that context. Okay. I can also do some checkboxes up here. So in general, I'm doing a deployment scope. Right now, if I had something new locally, it's not being shown. If I wanted to deploy something that's new, I'd check this. The default setting here, I was explaining this here, the default setting is I want to deploy local only, local plus server, and I want it to be filtered by my subscription. If I don't say filtered by my subscription, and by the way, this will be more interesting if I go over to the module, then what we'll see in the color codings down here at the bottom, you can see I've got a class here I've never deployed to the org. It's green. It may not look like green there, but it's green. So if I turn off local only, you wouldn't see that. But because I said not subscribed only, I can go down here and I would see, let's see, server only. Yeah, now I can see a whole bunch of stuff that I don't even care about. The reason you might want that, not so much in deploy, but in retrieve, is if you want to just go grab something to look at it. It's not part of your subscription, but you just want to go grab it as a one-off. But anyway, you go do this, and I'm going to just do this for a constrained set, because I don't even know what state I'm in here with this project. I'll do deploy modified metadata. I'll go ahead and say go, and it's going to deploy. And it says everything's up to date, because that had all been deployed. Let's just go over here and change this component ever so slightly. I'll just take that off, and I'll do same thing, and I'll say deploy, and it sees that it's dirty now, so it's deploying it. I can move that to the background. That was something people asked for. I used to just sit here and block, move to the background, keep working. Okay. Now let's go and do a retrieve. I want to see the latest and greatest here on my classes. Everybody staying awake? Everybody doing okay?
Yep.
All right. Do a retrieve. A couple of things I want to show about retrieve. So one of the requests that I got, and it was a brilliant request from somebody because it makes sense, and once I saw it in terms of a real workflow, is, okay, especially if you combine it with, I'm going to go deploy this to another org, is I want to see how this compares with the server version before I go and deploy. And so it's going to go retrieve that one file, and it's going to bring it up in your favorite comparison tool.
Oh, shit.
So here's Beyond Compare. You can use Araxis merge, WinMerge, KDiff, whatever you want to do. So you can take a look at it before you go do it on a file-by-file basis.
Wow.
That's more useful on a deploy than it is on a retrieve. In the retrieve screen, it's available in both. But yeah, she basically put that out there. I was like, why would you? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you. Because yeah, I mean it's life cycle.
Did you change this so that can load basically in like a browser context?
Load,
like if I was to just hit the down arrow, that it would just pop up in like a panel on the right?
Oh, you mean can I make it so it's a kind of a real-time preview in this?
Yeah.
I have a public issue tracker. It's a good time to talk about it. No, so that's exactly it. I think that was actually mentioned is could I even see it as I go down like you can in most version control tools. The reason I bring it up is I have a public issue tracker. I almost live there. Kind of scary. In general, I respond within about -5 seconds. Go ahead and log an enhancement request. It sounds like a great idea. Because then I could do it with color coding and all types of things.
But you reach that by right-clicking on?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. So there's a Compare with Server button up here. You can do that. Additionally, I think I made it so you can double-click. Did I? I don't remember. Oh, Control-D. Is it Control-D? Nope. I don't even know what I did anymore. That's kind of scary. Yeah, Control-D or Command-D on a Mac.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways to do it. Yeah, it gives you a quick way to just kind of cursor through these things and take a look at it.
Is the Compare with Server going to going to compare everything that's checked there, or is
No, it's whatever the one item you have highlighted is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a file by file right now.
Okay.
So let's go retrieve. So we're going to retrieve all of our classes. And here you see that it changed. Local only is unchecked and server only is checked, but it's still filtering through my subscription. Again, I try to make the defaults what people would want. But if you do change it, it sticks. I remember that across implications. So I'll say OK, and it's going to go and it's going to retrieve. Now, like I said, this is not retrieving directly into my source root. It's going to retrieve, and it's going to bring up now a comparison window where I can go and take a look at things. Now, I have IntelliJ right now set up to use a third-party comparison tool. It has one, I don't like it very much, to be perfectly honest. It's one place I think that they could improve, but it's not their primary focus. So I use Beyond Compare, and that way I can go and set up all types of, like, I only want to see things that are orphans on the left or orphans on the right, whatever it happens to be. So in this case, I'm going to go and it's saying that there are a couple of my classes that are different. So this is the one we just saw, and it's saying that there's a difference in this meta XML, and it's because it's expressed a dependency on Apex Lang. It detected a dependency on Apex Lang, and I can just shuffle this over, save here, get rid of that, and then I can just go close this, and I basically just synced. Done the equivalent of a sync, but it's a safe sync. It's one of those things that I think people, when they're used to, it's the closest thing to the Force.com IDE synchronized with server, synchronized view.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to get the net effect of that, what you would do is you would do a retrieve, you do that merging, and then you do a deploy.
So it's great when you have a managed package or extension of a managed package, and then you have to completely change your namespace for your other project.
You mean just to develop against it, kind of with a localized namespace?
Either a localized namespace or just another extension. Say I build a small app for a very small set of community, and then a larger app for a large end community.
Yeah, it would work well for that as well. Yeah. The thing that you brought up, by the way, is something that I deal with on a daily basis, is namespace translation. Does anybody do that as part of their ongoing development process? Yeah. So it's built into Illuminated Cloud. Yeah, because I deal with 6 managed packages all developed in one org. So what you do is you go into the connection manager, and you go down here, and you retrieve the organization namespace. This one doesn't have, I can show you one that does. In fact, let's just open up a project that has it. How are we doing on time? Are we doing okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So new window, another project, and let it index down there. I'll go ahead and open this up. We'll go back in here, bring this down. Yeah, so I registered the namespace for my dev org to be base dev. Typically, I just put my initials, SCW base or something like that. And I went down here and told it that the code that's in this module should be deployed into the development package called base package, and that the authoritative namespace, the one that I use for my publish managed package, is base. Okay. And what happens at that point is the code that I check into VCS uses the authoritative one, the one I'll use to deploy into my publishing org. It will automatically, on deployment, look for any namespace qualifications that are base underscore base colon for custom components and base dot, and it will automatically translate them to base underscore dev equivalent, and on retrieval, it will automatically reverse translate.
Wow.
That's very nice.
And so, and then additionally, and I didn't even, in fact, I don't think I've shown this, is when you go into here, if you have other types of conversions that you need to be able to do, and I helped the guy with this just this week, you can set up additional substitutions to happen automatically on deployment and retrieval. A really good example of this is if you check your code in with deprecated, because you deprecate things over time, and then you try to put that in the dev org, it won't work, is you can have that automatically commented as it deploys and uncommented as it retrieves, so that you don't ever, it's fire and forget. That's a good usage of it. Another guy used it because in their test code, they have a key that gets put in for an external call out, and everybody has their own key to an AWS service. And so what they do is they check it in with a macro, and then they do a substitution for the one that they have for themselves, and they do a reverse substitution back into the key so they don't check it in with anybody's key. So you can go and set up substitution rules per module, basically per connect, or per module in this case, and you can you just give it a regex pattern for the file pattern. The pattern it should find in the files as they go, what to replace it with, and you can decide whether that should happen before or after namespace replacement, which is automatic, because sometimes it might see something as a namespace and do a replacement when it shouldn't.
Are you doing logging when you're doing all that too? With the AWS key, I can see when it changes.
No. I'm not logging that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's even at the debug level, you can't crank it up enough to see that. Yeah. You mean in my IDE?
Yeah.
No, yeah, the substitution stuff that you type in, I don't log. Yeah. Now what I do is when people run into issues or whatever and they want to send me a log, I do ask that they go, whether it's logs or whether it's config files, that they do go and scrub them before they send them to me if there's anything that could be sensitive in it. I don't want to take responsibility for that. So I get a lot of redacted, but yeah, like I'm in the government or something. All right, so let's go back over here and where is he? Yeah, there we go. Let's see, where were we? So we were looking at configuration stuff, we were talking about deployment, we were looking at retrieval. One thing I do want to show you as far as retrieval is, I set up the external diff tool. If you go under tools, diff and merge, external diff tools, if you uncheck this, you'll get their standard out-of-the-box tool. It's like I said, it's not bad, but it's just not off-the-shelf. Third-party tools are much better. Beyond Compare is my favorite. I know a lot of people that swear by Araxis Merge. Both are commercial, worth the $30 or so.
Is your parallel processing still in beta?
No, not really. It's
I didn't see that it says beta up there, so I always check it. Well,
no, and it's amazing how much of a change that made. There were people that, no kidding, generating it's for the offline symbol table only, but was it org 42? There's a couple of orgs inside 62. Yeah.
Org 62.
That one actually still doesn't complete. You can turn some things off and it will. I think Chris Peterson's gotten it to where it will. But
well, it's cool that you've got developers that are actually. I don't have developer access to org 62.
Oh yeah, there's a whole host of people. Yeah, I learned all about. That's how I learned about org 62.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
They were like, okay, so it does work kind of, and not the tool works, but the offline symbol table generation was like, what did you throw at me?
Yeah, because it's big and old and.
Yeah. Well, he told me that there were. Was it almost every single custom object in it actually has 5,000 custom fields.
Okay, so what's our?
It's the internal. It's actually. Basically,
it's where we run our business.
It's Salesforce's Salesforce org.
I know 500 field limit there.
500, 5,000, whatever it was. But he said every custom object basically has, because he sent me a log and it was like looking at the count and it said fields and it said something like 473,000 and I went, okay, I'm just calculating. He goes, no, you didn't. So what was happening is all these, like I said, I have to call all these crazy APIs, and like I said, some of them aren't documented, things like that. And so, in fact, to do that one, I have to go set a special header that impersonates an internal Salesforce tool. And then that's the thing you can turn off the class overlays, but that's where all the goodies are.
Wow.
And but anyways, what was happening is orgs that had a tremendous number of custom objects or a huge, I guess that org has something like 70 managed packages installed in it or something like that.
Or if you install Remedy Force.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that huge?
Huge amounts of 2,000 objects.
Oh, yeah. So, in fact, yeah, I think
mine was like taking hours.
Yeah, and the parallel processing went in place. I remember, I think,
it's crazy.
Yeah, one of them went from 2.5 hours to 4 minutes.
Oh,
so, because all I do is just go out and basically partition the stuff because it's all independent, and I just basically say thread away. But the reason that it was in beta is it was keeling over some VMs that couldn't handle all the threads. And I'm using IDEA's thread pool, but evidently they're just like, if you say you want these threads, I'll give them to you. So,
wow.
Anywho, fun asides. Okay, so retrieve, refresh. The refresh, it's kind of nice to me. That's nice. Like one of the orgs I'm working in is just to go in, and there's another guy working in it. We have conflict detection on, and I basically just go in and say, right-click, Illuminated Cloud, refresh metadata. And now this is pretty much unattended. I can stick it in the background, and in just a second, I'll get a little toaster pop up saying refresh X files. Yeah, refresh 22 components in 6 seconds. Right.
So it's not going to bother with the compare on a refresh. It's just
refresh is. You're confident that what I'm about to do is right, and you don't even want to see that window, and it's not going to bring new stuff in. So the nice thing is, it's to me this is sync instead of integrate.
Okay.
Right. Let's go back to some of the quick things we got kind of thrown aside. So let's say you want to create a new list. NL, tab. What do you want a list of? Contacts. What do you want to call it? Contacts. I'm done. Right? I want to create a map. I want to create a map of, say, string to one of my custom objects. I'll just put underscore. No. There we go. And I'm going to call this now. I've started to, in fact, I just added this because I always name mine expenses, in this case, by strings. I just stopped the template when I did that. Expenses by strings. Let's go back in here. Be happy. All right, so we'll just do new map, string, expense. So expenses by strings. By default, it's string expense map, but I like to do that, and boom, done. There's a couple of SOAP query idioms. So let's say that you want to iterate, SQIT, tab. What do you want to iterate? Account.
That's so cool.
Okay, and so we'll name each one account and what I want to query from it, okay? But let's say I have a whole bunch of accounts and I need to do batch, SQ bit. It's going to do the doubly nested loop. Contact, it's going to return contacts, and for each contacts, I want to query these things, and I'm done. Let's say I want to query into a map by ID. Account, accounts by IDs. What do I want? Account numbers. And it just queried into a map. And now let's say I want to iterate that map. Now, all these things up here are collections. Now we're going back to the original question. But it also knows about some of the indirect collections, like on a map, that you can iterate by the key set and the values. In Apex, maps don't have entry sets. So I always like to iterate by entry sets once I build up a map. So me, and it'll go and it'll iterate the keys and automatically put a line in there for you to get the value. Okay. Let's see. If you're inside of a class and you want to do things like public final string, let's see. Am I not in the class? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not do this? Where am I? Why isn't that working? Oh, public static final. Sorry. Public static final string. Boom. My string, oh yeah, I'm sorry, it knows about constants as well. So it knows that it wants me to put that in all uppercase.
Wow. So did you teach it these keystrokes, or is this the default set that?
So it's an out-of-the-box set, but it's extensible. So let's go back in here to the editor, and let's go to live templates. And there's now a group of live templates under Apex.
Okay.
And you can expand that, and here's all the ones I've created. So you can create for loops, and it's basically a little templating. And again, this is Intellij IDEA. It's a templating language, and there's two things that come into play here. So you basically put variables in, and then I'll show you the way that it works. And then you go in, and then you say what expression you want to associate with that variable, and these can be the outputs of other variables. So you can see, in fact, if I go over a little bit, the order here is important because that's the order it's going to visit as you tab around. So I can say here, once key type's been established, I want to suggest a variable name based on the key type. And once the map types, things like that. And so what happens is there's a series, all the ones that start with Apex, of macros. I'm going to document these in the next week or two, by the way. But they're very much analogous to the ones that are for Java, which are already documented, except I've got some parameters that you can pass in. So you can actually go out and write pretty sophisticated ones yourself now based on these. I tried to take all the ones that were used, that were available out of the box in Java. I tried to put them here. So you can go, and in my abstract syntax tree that gets built behind the editor, you can go out and ask things like, what are the accessible variables? What are all the accessible variables of this type at the caret? Wow. What is the type of this variable with this name? And you can tie those things together. So you can do some pretty sophisticated things. What are the parameters of the current method scope, the scope method? What are the parameters, or what's the return type of it? What's its name? What's the class name? So you can go and do those types of things. So you can write your own here. Lazy instantiation of properties, reverse iterate of a list, try catch. Surround with. We haven't even talked about surround with. You want to do some exception handling, surround with. try-catch finally, done. And then now it knows about all the exception types in the system, so I want to catch illegal state exceptions, and there, I'm now fine for that.
Wow.
If you wanted to, if you guys are writing a unit test and you want to do a system run as, again, surround with, and there's a system run as, and if you had a user, okay, well, we didn't have a user, so let's do something fun. Let's do, has anybody ever run a SQL query and you assign it to a single instance of a variable, and you don't get back a single instance, you get back none or more, and you get an exception, and that sucks, right? So SQV, by the way, is I want to run a SQL query, and I want to assign it to a variable. Assign it into a list, okay? So there's a quick way to just do, I literally just right there wrote a SQL query, right?
Yeah.
And I type 3 letters and tab, and then just tab around. But now let's say that I want to do that, and I want to safely put that into a single variable. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to get the account, and it's going to query it into accounts, and it's going to do a safe length check and put it into a single variable, so you're going to get null back. So in case it wasn't apparent, these are the lines that I just generated. So let's do that now. Let's query a user. So SQV1, and let's get a user, and we'll put that in the user, and I want to get the, not the ICER, but the username, and that got that back, and now I want to go and run as that user, and it knows about users, and it goes ahead and prompts you for the user, okay? And again, you can look at the macro. I mean, all I did, like that user thing, is I said, go find me all the accessible variables of type user.
Wow.
And put one there. And you can see it's validating in the background right now, because I just made some changes. And it just found an error. It found a duplicate variable, right? So are those kind of what you were talking about with the type a few letters and a bunch of code appears? Yeah.
Any other cool templates maybe for XHR or for anything else non-Apex like Visualforce or?
So I plan to add them. I wanted to get started with the one that, again, it's all about me. So I want to get with the ones that I want the most. But no, seriously, those are the ones that I kind of find myself running into the most, because I don't find the same idioms in Visualforce. You're right, something in like JavaScript for an XML HTTP request or a Visualforce remoting or something like that would be a great example of it. The other thing I would love to see is I'd love to see the community start writing some of these and just posting them back.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to include them or put us on the side, say, here's a library you can download, because in fact, JetBrains documents this, they document how you can go and export these things. So I think that's a perfect example of one. And when we start getting more into Lightning, there are going to be a lot more, because all the Aura APIs lend themselves well to the same types of idiomatic type of code. You ever want to just query everything and Apex doesn't, or SQL doesn't have select star?
Right.
Self star, tab, account,
Oh, God.
unreadable.
Does that bring in all the system, the standard fields as well?
It does. So it brings that, so what I'm going to do,
Start.
yeah, it does. So it is the equivalent of SQL select star.
Wow.
It'll get everything. And maybe a better example of that would be, a smaller object like my shopping list items. And you get something a little bit more usable there. To that point, I mentioned earlier on the macros that there are some parameters you can pass. One of the things I'm going to add on the parameter that is the get all fields of this object type is a discriminator that says I truly want all, I want all but system lifecycle, or I want just custom.
Yeah.
Those seem like the 3 you want.
Nice.
That's the one I think a lot of people would use.
Just custom? Yeah. But the one to me that, I find that like ID and name, I always want with custom. So I might have like a custom plus or something like that that's ID and name. But yeah, in general. But this was actually requested by a user who came from a .NET background and used select star trying to do diagnostics all the time, and was driven crazy by the fact that he couldn't do select star. So I threw this out there Thursday, I think, and he came back from Midwest, he came back from that and upgraded and sent me a note yesterday, thank God it's here. But yeah, I love feedback from people, because to me I was like, select star's not part of the grammar. It doesn't work, but
Does now.
does now.
Once you hit governor limits,
there's not a governor limit on, there is a governor limit on the amount of data that can come back. So if you have large text,
Right.
area, but you can also, I mean, you can do this, and it comes back with that. You can always go edit what's coming back.
Right.
Right. I mean, now this is just in the editor, it's editing.
That was exactly what I was going to say. You might want to have like all but long text area. So like blow up your view state.
That's a great idea. I'll jot that down. I'll end up with like 18 different versions of it. But yeah. All but things that start with X.
I think a lot of my selling cheat sheets really just for all the commands.
Well, and I'm going to do that. Like I said, I'm actually going to document certainly the live templates. I'm going to document them, and I'm also going to I'm also going to document the macros that you can use, because I would love to see some of those start coming in. So I'm just looking here. So the funny thing is, so I've presented several user groups from Dreamforce on this, but every time I've got more features, so I go and I'm trying to figure out what to trade out over time. Full windows, unit testing, code coverage, the debugger, the formatter. Let's look at some BCS integration. All right, so again, this is anything I've done, but I have this set up against Git right now, okay? By the way, you can do that by just going in and going into version control here, and it'll list, there's several ways you can associate it, and I've gotten this question recently. You can associate it at a project level, so if your entire project's governed under the same repo, or in the case like I use Perforce at work, same depot, whatever it happens to be, or workspace, then that's fine. You can also go and you can set it up on a per directory structure basis. So you can give it a root folder. So if you wanted to go and say module X's source root goes to this depot, and then module Y goes here, you can set that up. But then you can go and you can say which BCS you want. Like I said, I have several turned off here, but all the open source ones, the free ones, are available with Community Edition. If you go to commercial, then you get TFS, Perforce, Clear Case, those as well. Pretty much just go set it up, and then you get this nice little version control tab down here. And honestly, I spend most of my time in here. I rarely have to go to an external tool or anything. And so you can go and you can take a look. These are all my working files. I can go in and I can see what's different since the last revision. I can bring up revision history down here, all the things that you would expect. You can do branching and merging from within here. In fact, I do all the...
Can you rebase from in there?
You can rebase, yeah, absolutely. It's
are these IntelliJ features, or?
It's IntelliJ, yeah. Rebase onto, yeah. In fact, I do all of my version control for IC right here. I used to use Tortoise, and I used to use what's Atlassian's
Source tree.
Yeah, source tree, until source tree like would just lock up when it would come up. I love Atlassian tools, but that one doesn't work very well for me.
Are you kind of Bitbucket, the new pipelines and all that too?
So I actually use Bitbucket for this, and I haven't set up any pipelines yet, and I'm planning to look into it.
Okay.
Yeah, right now all of that I have running primarily through AMP, because the default build that gets built for a plugin by the JetBrains tools is AMP based, and I just went and kind of extended that.
That's Jenkins, right?
Well, ANT is the script, and a continuous integration tool can pretty much run any script. But right now, I pretty much have all that sitting behind. Actually, right now, I don't have CI going.
Okay.
I've been planning to go and put it behind CI, but I've been trying to figure out who I want the provider to be. Are you talking about what they're doing with ACDX?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't know if so. Yeah, I'm actually on ACDX, so it's unfortunately that probably wouldn't work well for me. Now the Heroku pipelines might.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is all written in Java, the plugin is. But yeah, I'm a big fan of CI. I'm a big fan of CD. Although I don't think I do CD on this, because there's a certain level of manual testing. I'm never going to get automated testing on something.
Did you ever try Bamboo?
Yeah, actually, we've used Bamboo.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I use Jenkins. My primary one is Jenkins right now. We set up Bamboo for a while. We liked it, but there were some plugins for Jenkins that we needed, that we had a hard time getting over working with Bamboo, so we just went back to Jenkins.
Did they kill Bamboo?
They did. They put in order for pipelines. So I'm just wondering from like a workflow perspective, or with global variables or anything else, like setting that up was kind of the kill factor for you. Or,
in Bamboo?
Yeah.
It literally was some plugins that we were using.
Okay.
And I can't even remember what they were. I just remember the build engineer went out and basically, so he got everything going, but there were some holes in our CI/CD, and we were trying to figure out how to fill them in, and we contacted Atlassian. This was 2.5, 3 years ago. Contacted Atlassian at the time, and they were like, well, you could go out and you could basically write this script, and it would call out to this thing over, and we're like, okay, that's starting to sound a little rickety. The whole point here is robustness. So we stuck with Jenkins.
Okay.
Yeah. but yeah, it's the version control is absolutely fantastic in here, and it's just here. And then additionally, and I don't know if I have it on right now. Let me see.
You show the log as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Lots of people don't go over that tab, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, all the obviously all the submission activity, branching activity. Yeah, absolutely cherry picking. One of my favorite features of Git. And yeah, the log's really useful. You can obviously see everything that's going on. If you're a command line user, by the way, in IntelliJ, there's a built-in terminal. It's actually pretty damn good. I've got it set up to go into Sigma and Bash. Generally, I've got it, well, right here, RxBT going, but you can go out and do pretty quick things. So it's kind of nice. Some other IntelliJ things, to-dos, all IDEs have that, but you can have it basically show you all the to-do markers that you have, just to-do colon and a comment, and it'll start tracking it for you. The task, and I don't know if I have this hooked up right now. I don't. So you can set up task management. You can obviously set this up to work with things like Jira. I have mine set up on my other project to work with Bitbucket. And so as I go and have tasks that I'm working, I can go and switch context and basically associate it here, and then it'll automatically go move it to the states and things like that. A little bit like, what's it called in Eclipse? Begins with an M.
Myelin?
Myelin, yeah. A little bit like Myelin in Eclipse.
Interesting.
Because you can have it basically completely reconfigure it based upon the task context, things like that. Just context switching, literally.
So for new users, because I know that coming from Eclipse to IntelliJ was fantastic. All of a sudden, there's all this power, but wow, so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So many things, so many buttons, so many tabs, so much, right? What do you recommend? How do you recommend an Eclipse user transition to Illuminated Cloud?
One thing that I definitely recommend is the key map. It's not a perfect one, but it comes with an Eclipse key map out of the box. It's going to make a liar out of me. Yep. Eclipse and Eclipse Mac OS X, so that you don't have to. Let me say this. I think that there's a lot to be said for retraining your fingers. I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that I won't do it, and so me telling somebody else to do it is hypocritical. When I was working in the Force.com IDE for a few years before this was over here, a guy, Santosh Kumar, I think, actually went and created a plugin for Eclipse, because it actually doesn't have just inherently reassignable key maps. So he actually created a plugin that did exactly that for IntelliJ, and I went, and that's exactly what I use. So I don't eat my own dog food, or do as I say, not as I do, I guess. So that would be one thing. The other thing that I recommend, there's two things. One, dzone actually has a really good ref card out there on Intellij IDEA. I sent this just to a user just the other day. In fact, it may be posted in the community forums. dzone has a really great ref card that explains the mindset of Intellij IDEA. It talks about what a module is and what a project is, and because obviously it's very different. There are no perspectives and things like that. It just lets you get your head wrapped around it, and it goes through some of the most powerful key bindings that'll really be time savers. That, and then the other thing that I showed you over here, for IC specific stuff, go through these, learn them. Control W. Does anybody know what Control W does?
Close the cat.
Well, okay, let me say this. On the Mac keyboard, it may be slightly different, so let me look real quick. It's opt up on the Mac. One of my favorite keys, and I've rarely found people that know it. All right, so I'm on Run As here. I'm going to hit Control W. It's going to highlight that word. Now, wait. Don't buy yet. There's more. I'm going to hit Control W again, and it's going to highlight the expression. I'm going to hit Control W again, it's going to highlight the block, and it's going to highlight the method, and it's going to highlight the class. It knows about nested syntactic structures, and then Control Shift W decreases. So if I want to go over here and say get rid of this entire system as user, I'm going to do Control W at the top of it and hit delete. It understands nested syntactic structures.
Okay.
And can you bring it back?
Do that.
Can you do those in group, like say, do a few of those and then hit?
Yeah, there actually is multi-select. I don't use it because I accidentally use it all the time and it confuses the crap out of me. So if that's the type of thing you like and you can figure out how to use it, more power to you. I somehow start deleting things off other people's hard drives accidentally.
So that's when you actually have to use the map.
Yeah. No, unfortunately. The Glide text has a really easy way to get the multi-select cursor. There's not an equivalent. There's not an equivalent keyboard shortcut that I was able to find with Intellij.
Okay.
But you can keep making them though?
No, so that's the thing. The research that I did, it didn't seem like, at least on a Mac, I think that the Mac system was catching the keys first or something. So it just wasn't possible from what I could tell. So I had to, if I want a multi-select cursor, I just use there's a mouse shortcut. I'm going to hit Alt and so
like things like history, and then you can do like all the cool things.
No, I do miss it. I think it's something that they're going to work on, but
it's really nice.
It is nice, yeah, to be able to just do like a control command or something, and then double down on the arrow keys or something to get the multi-select.
Too quick, if we had a question.
Real quick, what about for somebody who's doesn't have an IDE background, they're coming into it fresh? Any hints or tips for installation? Accept all the defaults, and then work.
To start, I would accept all the defaults. Later, once you feel comfortable, you can go into what's going to happen is there's two things that are going to happen by accepting the defaults. It's going to put a bunch of plugins out there, some of which are just taking up space. So you might go in and just say, well, I don't use these version control systems, or I don't use these third-party frameworks, and just turn them off. That's one thing, it just prevents bloat. The other thing is it may have set things like color scheme, key bindings, whatever, that you want to go and switch to be more to your liking. But in general, accept the defaults. And I'm speaking mostly about Intellij right now.
Right. That's what I meant.
Intellij. And then the way that you install Illuminated Cloud, by the way, is you just go in here and you go to plugins. So I went into settings, by the way. I keep just going in here. I'm hitting Control-Alt-S or Command comma on the Mac. But basically, if you go under File, Settings, or on the Mac, it's under the Intellij IDEA. It's just preferences. But I'm going in here, and then you go to plugins, and then you just go browse repositories. If you just go up here and search, you'll see Illuminated Cloud, and then you just go over here. I've got it installed, but there'll be an install button. You do that, it'll prompt you to reboot. It'll come up, and then you can start creating new projects.
16,000 downloads?
That is crazy for.
Well, that does not. Some of those are cross updates and things like that. Yeah. No, it's.
We'll get you there.
And
He's not retired yet.
Yeah, that's kind of funny money there. So.
Working in Bangladesh.
Yeah, so I do highly recommend that. The D-Zone ref card. If you just go to D-Zone and just say Illuminated Cloud ref card, Illuminated Cloud, that would be awesome, by the way. Intellij IDEA ref card, and the most recent one they put out was outstanding. And just print that out and just work through it. Read it, work through it.
Right.
Yeah. One or two other things, and then we'll go look at the site. The other thing I want to do is talk about futures, kind of where it's going. Let's very quickly. I didn't spend much time on Lightning. I've made a big push on Lightning over the last few months. I actually think it's pretty close to best in class. I'm not done. I'm by far not done. I want to get it so like any place where it should be doing special completions it is. I want to get a lot of navigation going. But again, this is in Community Edition. But I did go in, and in fact, this kind of drove a friend of mine crazy. It's like you're spending your time in the wrong place. But I did go in and spend some time. If I had not done it, you would see no. Well, in this you would, but inside of like inline and script tags and in style tags, you wouldn't see any color coding whatsoever, any syntax highlighting or anything like that. You wouldn't get any auto indentation or anything like that. You would certainly not get any type of completion, and I made it so that you do, just to make it a little bit friendlier. Partly because I started writing these things myself, and again, but now you are going to get some completion. So if we go over and say, get expenses, and I'll go ahead and do that and take out these guys and functions. So we get keyword completion. You get, I don't know if you saw that. I mean, it kind of goes fast, but you obviously get brace pairing on the various types of braces, component, and so you get auto indentation. Now, let's go to action.set callback. All right, now I can see that this is callback in action. If I go over here, and if I didn't show you this earlier, Control P. Control P will show you the parameters of a method. So this is a function. Same thing happens over here, and in fact, this is pretty important. Let me do, I'm going to hit Control P, and it's going to show me all the signatures of this, okay? And let's do logging level dot debug, comma, and it now knows I'm on the second parameter. If you're ever wondering about the signature, this to me is like, it changes the way that you write code because you're not going, okay, what am I doing?
Right.
And so I put the same thing over here into JavaScript, and here's the way that it works. For the standard JavaScript library, for the BOM, for the DOM, it's automatically pulled in. There's nothing that you have to do. Okay. For Lightning, Lightning and Visual Force, it will go look at your standard includes. So the Lightning include script, the Apex include script and Apex style sheet, the Lightning include scripts. So it'll go look at those and it'll actually go grab them. And it'll actually, I didn't even touch on this, good Lord. What have we been doing? Does anybody here work with frameworks with static resources? Okay. All right, so if we go over here, and let's say that I'm doing that, I'm going to go over to Mobile Design Templates. I'm going to right-click, I'm going to go to Illuminated Cloud, and I'm going to say Convert to Static Resource Bundle, and it's going to explode it. So now I'm working with it in exploded fashion, okay? And it uses the rich editors of Illuminated Cloud, of Intellij IDEA. So now here's one of those JavaScript files, and if I go over here and make a change to this guy, and I hit save, it reconstitutes the original resource before deploying it automatically.
Yeah, we're using grunt tasks in order to do all of that and push it back as a zip, so this is awesome.
Good. And then when you retrieve, it comes down as a resource. If it sees that resource is being treated as a resource bundle before it brings up that diff tool, it automatically explodes it over in the retrieve temporary so that you're diffing the actual files.
No way.
And you bring them over. So, and then anytime you want to go back, you just go over and right click and say, let me click Convert to Static Resource Bundle, and now it's back. So, so that also helps having a JavaScript editor that goes and actually does at least a modicum of completion, syntax highlighting, things like that. Again, I'm not trying to compete with JetBrains there, but I want to make it so it's at least a comfortable place to work. So a couple of things there. So let's talk futures. The current major version family is 1.x. I'm getting near 1.8. It's been out for about a year, a little over 13 months. And I am starting to wind down on what I want to do for the first major push. To me, when I got started on this, the biggest thing I wanted an editor experience that felt right, an idea, and I think I'm close on that. I'm not totally there, but I think I'm close. And then thanks to certain people talking about like deployment retrieval and stuff like that, went and improved that. That was admittedly light, one of many actually, but yeah, certainly one of the more vocal ones. But it was great because that type of feedback is what helps to improve. And so got deployment and retrieval into good shape. The debugger, I told the story earlier, but the debugger actually came about. I was out mountain biking. I was like, I could do a debugger, and then came back and decided to do a debugger, and it pushed Lightning out like a month, and probably not the best decision I ever made, but I thought everybody needs a debugger. I mean, seriously, that's been enormously missing from Salesforce. But it is winding down. 1.x, I plan to add a few more things. I'm going to finish Lightning. There's a ton of completions. There's a ton of reference navigation. I do want to get integrated API docs for the, I have them for the tags. I don't have them for the ARA libraries. I want to get those in there. So that'll be one of the things that I definitely try to get in there. The static resource bundle stuff that I just showed, if you've used Maven's Mate, they do theirs in a different way. They put it outside of the source root. It's a little bit more friendly to source code management. I'm going to have a basically tools interop feature there that allows you to say, I want to deal with static resource bundles the same way the other tools do.
Have you ever used things like Bower?
Not familiar.
You're able to pull in, it's like just an API where you can pull in any third party that you want. So it just makes it easier. Say I want to go find, something that could be like sound.js, I can pull it right in. Then boom, I can turn it into a static resource.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Enhancement.
That would be great.
No, I think it's a great idea. Yeah. Throw it out there.
Post that one.
That sounds, this may not be a decent analog, but to me that sounds like effectively what happened when we started using Maven and Gradle and you express dependencies and boom, it just happened, right?
Yeah, I can do that packet, yeah.
Yeah.
I would love if there were like a Salesforce package manager for like bringing in third-party
Right?
stuff, right? Like I've been thinking about like NPM or you know, like SPM or something, you know.
Or just everything that's already whitelisted and you can go get it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
One thing that's kind of on the line right now would be Apex Doc. I think a lot of people, I would love to have that be the way that, because someone else already did the work, but the way that people are doing effectively, like, you know, literate programming for all practical purposes for Apex. But that may get bumped over. So 2.0, this is, in my opinion, when the foundation set when it's really fun. Two major initiatives are going to be refactoring, real refactoring, not just rename, extraction refactorings and things like that. The nice thing is all this expression stuff that I said I'm evaluating every expression, I already know that stuff. Now extract method and such because of multiple return variables and things like that, but extract variable, parameter, field, that stuff, literally I just need to go write it, and that's the stuff that really makes it fast. I don't know if, I always do right to left programming. I write what I want, and then I basically extract into where I want it, and it's really fast. I can't do that right now. So that's one of the things that I want to do. So a lot of refactoring, and the other one is, I showed you earlier how it can go out and kind of talk to Salesforce to understand the quality of the code, not so much syntax compliance, but semantic, contextual compliance. Things like, is this a duplicate variable, is this an unused variable, or do the types match, and if not, should you cast it, things like that. So one of the things I'm going to be doing in Intellij, if you've used it for Java, and Eclipse has the same thing, it's called inspections. So basically it's all the linting that happens on the client side as you write your code, and intentions, which is quick fixes. Okay, so I basically have a type mismatch, and I hit Alt-Enter, and it says, do you want to change the type of the left to be the type that this is, or do you want to put a cast in place? So all that stuff. And between those, that should make it so the code almost writes itself, and you think about the problem you're solving, not the code that it takes to do it. So those will be two of the big things that are going to go in there. I mentioned Apex Doc. I kind of have it in there. PMD. Has anybody seen this work that's done from Robert Sussman? Does anybody know what PMD is? Does anybody know about Sonar Cube or anything like that? Find bugs. So these are tools that you can use in other languages, and they go out and they're effectively really, really, really smart code quality assessment. It's linters, but it's even more than that. They'll look for like cyclomatic complexity according to rules, things like that, and you can go set up your own rule set. So like, you know, a common usage of that is architects will go out and set up rule sets, and basically the continuous integration goes and gets a continuous quality assessment, and then the architects can go look at it, or the QA can go look at it, things like that. So PMD is one of these tools, and a group led by Robert Sussman went out and actually used the Salesforce, the one that's in the Force.com ID, the parser that's in there, and bound it and created a set of rules, and it's now automated quality assessment. And they're building up the rule set, and I'm going to integrate it into Illuminated Cloud. I've already gotten this permission. So there'll be, in addition to the inspections I'll be doing, there will actually be that, and as people build that out, this will just show up as you type, or you'll be able to run it. So things like that. So that's the stuff I'm going to be working on for 2.0, probably starting later this year.
This is honestly like everything I've wanted in Salesforce. I want a package manager, a linter, a scanner so I can stop using check marks where like it goes into the black hole and I never know when it's going to come back.
You just brought up something interesting though, and that is the check marks also does a lot of security rules. So those will be some things that go into the inspections, because as an ISV myself, I'm conscious of those all the time. We're always doing check marks. Like every time we release, so that we're not getting caught at security review, one of our, the definition of done with our release controls is we have to go over a check marks report for us. And so I'm very sensitive to those. If I could see those, pretty much those types of common things as I'm doing them. CRUD FLS, right?
Right.
And then I want, if I'm not, you know, if basically I'm not doing authorized checks, or if sharing model's not right, I should be able to hit Alt-Enter and have it go fix it for me. That's the type of stuff as well. So yeah, that's going to be 2.x. Oh, and the offline debugger, not the offline, the interactive debugger integration. All right, so we have 1 minute left. Do we have a hard stop?
Sounds okay.
No, fine.
So real quick before we jump into any additional Q&A, obviously it's been a little bit interactive, we've gone along. Just want to show a couple of things. So the site I do have under the fact. Please look here first. I have a whole new set of frequently asked questions that are going to be going in here, but take a look at this if something's going wrong. It tries to address some of the major things that could be happening. But the other thing is I've got, one, pin tab number 3 is the issue tracker. Search the issue tracker. Enter anything you want to the issue tracker. Vote on the issue tracker. Comment on existing issues.
Yep.
To me, this is basically the living backlog. It's my input, and it's all the users' input. And if you've watched this, you'll see that users have a lot of input. They've influenced this heavily in a good way. It's fantastic. It's great to draw on a community like that. So this is a great place to go and provide me feedback. Also support at illuminatedcloud.com or scott at illuminatedcloud.com. The other thing is there are some groups, and the coolest thing has happened in the last few months, and that is I don't have to answer all the questions. People are answering other people's questions, which has been outstanding.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of groups here that have gotten to have a reasonable amount of traffic on them. People just talking about how does this work, or even one of them right now is just branching strategies and for multiple orgs against the same code base and basically pipelines, right? And then how do you integrate that with not Illuminated Cloud but Intellij IDEA?
And so everything we saw tonight was community edition.
That's all the free base, yeah. It's all free basing.
What would we get for doing the unlimited edition of Intellij?
You get a lot. I mean, it's like I said.
Is there anything you would recommend? You think like for
if you're doing a tremendous amount, and this is going to happen with Lightning, right? Or if you're doing Angular or React, if you're doing a lot of JavaScript, just go get it. Pay them the money. They've earned it.
Yeah. Well, $500 for individual.
It's not anymore. With the subscription stuff, it's quite a bit
cheaper.
cheaper. Yeah. Right. Now if they move to subscription, it's quite a bit cheaper. Now it's recurring, but well, but it's recurring maintenance before.
Oh yeah, I guess that's right.
Yeah, I mean it was maintenance, or you would go, ooh, shiny new thing, I need it. Hey boss, upgrade me. They've done a pretty good job of getting the pricing down. It's accessible now. So I mean, I would say go get a 30-day trial. You get a 30-day trial from them and see what it brings to the table. There's a lot there. And they're like I said, they have explicit support for all these frameworks. They grok them. So it's amazing.
Good word usage.
What's that?
Grok.
Who doesn't know grok? Grok's in our collective vocabulary.
Yeah.
I said that to my wife, and she's like, no, just go away.
And is there a trial version for this, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a 30-day trial.
Okay.
And if you're still evaluating it after that, just ping me, and I get extended. In fact, it's kind of interesting. I had quite a few people start trying it right before Christmas, and they went away for 2 weeks, and they came back, and I just go for another month. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, there's a 30-day trial.
It's such a no-brainer.
Once you use it.
Yeah. You got, no, this is one of the coolest products I think I've used in years.
Questions? Should we unmute people on the phone?
Probably. Oh, and then what's the licensing model? Is it just per seat? Is it?
It's perpetual right now. The 1.x licensing model is perpetual.
You are now unmuted.
Yeah, it's a user license. It's not a named user license. It can be transferred very easily. It gives you. It is a machine locked license, but you get 2 activations. So basically, home and work, laptop, desktop, whatever. But by use by the same user.
Okay.
With 2.x, just so to be completely genuine, with 2.x, I'm likely going to go to a subscription-based model, subscription-based platform, subscription-based model, the price will go up a little bit. I haven't figured out what it is, but probably won't go up much. Just trying to think. The existing licenses will get a significant upgrade on to 2.x. A lot of it being prorated based upon recency. So I don't want somebody that goes out and basically buys it, and then a month later I put 2.x out, and they are not happy with me. So they would probably, like in that case, you probably get like a free grandfather and just go straight to 2.x, and then 2 or 3 months out, you get a nice discount. A year out, you still get a discount. But so just haven't worked out the numbers yet. But yeah, it's perpetual for now. The only wart is on the whole way it works right now. The third party, the third party library that I use for licensing is actually really good, and it's cross-platform, but it has 2 issues. One, they don't have just a standard way to go out and say, I want to reset a license. So right now, I'm that way. So I wake up every morning and go reset a few licenses. Not every morning, but someone's machine will crash or someone will leave and they didn't deactivate it, and so I go do deactivations. And the other is it's very, very sensitive against machine lock to, like, I disabled my Wi-Fi controller or my Wi-Fi interface. Wait, it's a whole new machine. Sorry. Yeah. There's a new version that's been coming out since December. I kid you not, it will be out in December. But I mean, I've got to appreciate the complexity of the problem they have, especially in the cross-platform, and they're trying to go out and get a fingerprint for a machine based on all these things and make it so it's strict enough so that it protects your IP, but not so strict that it's doing what it's doing right now to me. So I spend a lot of time resetting licenses.
Did you fix the problem you emailed us about that?
It was fixed an hour later, yeah. Yeah, I just didn't want people, one person, so it's funny, I ran into it. It was actually my wedding anniversary. I was having lunch with my wife, so I was like, okay. And in the middle of it, people started hitting it. I was like, crap. All right, pay attention to your wife. Pay attention to your wife. Yeah, no, this vacation was already planned. Yeah. For the next vacation. But seriously, so then what I did is I went back and I was like, okay, I don't know how long it's going to take. So I fired off that email, and within an hour it was fixed. So it was what happened, for those of you not in the know, is JetBrains, with the most recent update to 2016.2, it's the first time they've done it in a relatively minor release. They actually made a completely backward incompatible, compile time backward compatible change to their API, to their SDK for plugins. They changed something that was a constant. Basically, it wasn't a constant actually. It was a final field into a method. And what happened is, and it's basically where you go out and check for a proxy. So it's every time a call out takes place. And so it basically broke all our communication. Not just in me, every plugin. Atlassian, it broke the Atlassian plugin. It broke the Scala plugin that JetBrains makes. They evidently didn't QA that. But yeah, I figured out how to, with reflection, figure out, go here, go there.
Is anyone updated to that?
I haven't updated it. Is it safe now?
I mean, I
think you.
Yeah, I have a lot of...
Because my Illuminated Cloud stopped updating when JetBrains wanted me to update my Intellij.
Everything I just showed is on 2016.2.
Yeah. Okay.
So if yours isn't working, is Illuminated Cloud not working, or?
Well, ever since, because I haven't upgraded to the new version of Intellij.
Okay.
The Illuminated Cloud won't let me update the Illuminated Cloud.
That's weird. Yeah, go ahead and get everything updated, and if that doesn't put you in good shape, I'm up at all hours for some reason. Sleep is something in the past. I also have twins, so yeah. It's like, yeah, that's why we're here. They turn 6 next week, so we're having a lot of fun with them. But yeah, between twins and 2 jobs, and yeah, I just don't sleep. So yeah, just shoot over an email. Anything else?
There was a chat.
There was? Okay, I'm sorry.
There was a chat message from you, Sean.
We're going over to channel.
Hopefully I can't hear you.
Doing an iPhone and see no video.
Yeah, well, okay.
Oh, Rob was on.
Yeah. You still there, Deshaun?
Yeah, still here.
Were you able to see anything?
Sorry?
Were you able to see anything?
Yes, sorry guys, I was also working on some other stuff because right now it's about 5:30, 5:40 here in Hawaii.
Wow. I feel so sorry for you.
Yeah. You're watching the sunset.
Yeah. Waiting for the green flash.
Well, that's good at least.
Yeah, and Scott, actually I'm the guy who initially complained about the offline symbol table. It took me a couple hours on my Mac. But on different station on Windows and PC, it takes 10-15 minutes.
Oh, that's
interesting. And you responded within Oh my gosh, I remember like it was like half an hour or something like that. It was like ridiculously fast. This is like, oh, this is the guy. This is the guy. Okay.
Half an hour, I must have fallen asleep for a little bit. Anything else?
No, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys again.
We love your product.
Great.
Yeah, this is good.
Now you can write the vacation.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is an expense.
No? I don't think I want an audit. Just
You can write off.
Yeah, stop recording.